All right.
So we'll be back. Yeah.
Someone can take a picture. 5:30. Hey, how y'all doing? Doing theme music to get us ready. If you logging on, say hi. Did y'all get a chance to watch the article? Read the article. All right. I got a question for y'all. What time is it? I said, what time is it? All right. So today I want to discuss something very, 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 very triggering for me. This weekend I was reading this report from the United Negro College Fund, and it was talking about the need for educational reform. So if you haven't got a chance to look at the report, I want you guys to go and look in the comments. And I shared a link to the report in the comments. I think that everybody with a kid in school needs to read this. I sent it out to some families, some 530s families. And today, it's not about what I think. I'm going to interject some of my views, of course, because I can't help it because I'm so passionate about the kids and so passionate about what happens to it, because it's our responsibility to make sure our kids are okay. And it's our responsibility to make sure our kids get the best education. But I can't control what everybody else does, but I can control what I do as an individual. So I'm super passionate about it. So it's my responsibility. You know, if nobody else steps up to the plate, my attitude is going to be my responsibility. But I know it's a lot of 530 scholars, parents who share the same sentiment. So I wanted to just have a good conversation about this article, this research that was done. So if you haven't, if you haven't read it, the article is in the comments. So just take a look at it, and I wanted to talk about some of the things that just stood out to us as parents as we read the article. All right, Mark, is your mic working?
Yes.
All right. So before I share my thoughts, I just wanted to get insight from you guys. Sometimes as one of the leaders for 530, you know, I'm trying to be careful about sharing my views. So then people won't like, yeah, I agree with that. You know, I want to just get your raw reaction, just your raw views, you know, and just what stood out to you when you read the article.
There are a few things that stood out to me in reading the article, and I'll circle back to some later. But actually, one of the things that stood out that's near and dear to me is it mentioned the role of participants from the community, and especially the need for clergy and/or the church, not secular church, not other issues, but basically leaders that start or should be starting with a strong moral code to get behind and help get this education going for the students, and to be active in those children's lives as mentors. For whatever else we might say about that, that is near and dear to me because of my background. So that was one of the things that stood out right away, is the role and responsibility of like-minded people.
All right. So, all right. So the role of clergy. Let's talk about that. Why was that the thing that spoke to you the most? Like, I know you're a person of faith. And I know that that's one of the most important things in your life. But like, in what ways did that stand out to you, and how did it make you feel? Did it make you feel challenged? Did it what did it make you feel as a person of faith?
Well, it definitely made me feel challenged, and and I believe in it because when you look at, and again, from my biblical background, when you look at what should be a strong staple and foundation in the community, for any community, it should be those positive principles of the biblical principles on love, joy, peace, on being able to work together, that are a foundation for how we move forward, not greed, not selfishness, not other things. And there should be, and I'm not plugging where I go or anything like that but it should be that the starting point is a good heart, the need to give back, and the understanding that none of us get to where we go without the grace of God to move forward, that these are the things we should be passing on to the children in the community. We need to give back. We find ourselves doing well. We find ourselves making a nice income. We find ourselves having opportunity. Give back to somebody less fortunate versus looking at them like, well, you need to get yours, I get mine. We need to have the right spirit where we're doing it so that when one person has an advantage, then that passes on to all having advantage. I'll just real quickly, and this is less about clergy and more about the curbside effect that I read about from Berkeley. They put a curb, they lowered the curbs just to handle those who needed to use wheelchairs and operate wheelchairs. And they realized by doing that, it benefited businessmen with briefcases. It benefited parents and people with children and strollers. It benefited those who had sore knees and things where walking up a ramp versus having to step up was beneficial. And it just goes to show that if you take a benefit that you receive or that you think only works for one person, that benefit may spread out. So if I have a good education because so many people sowed it in my life, that should be the same thing that I pass on the others. And I thought that that's what the article brought out. And that's the positive that I took for why they said the clergy should have a role. Less about the institution and everything about the spirit behind why it's important to have people give back with the right motives.
Yeah. I was, I have my experiences with clergy. I am a person of faith. I just have a different radical, and I come from a community organizing background, and I think that a lot of times I hold clergy to a super high standard, and I want to make sure that the clergy are walking that walk that they talk about, right? So it's not like this feel good, emotional, like kumbaya type of Christianity that I practice. It's the Christianity of Jesus flipping over tables, and and a lot of times, I've expressed my disappointment sometimes when leaders just want to focus on that feel good. Let's sing some songs. Let's do a lot of clapping, run around, and just get emotional about our spirituality feeling. And and I've seen a trend over the years with like people falling away from the church and people not believing in the church like they did in the past, and the church not paying as critical of a role in our empowerment as they did during the civil rights movement. And it was actually shocking to me to see during that poll, like, man, people, like, I don't know if you got to read the article that they were referencing, but it was like, man, the people who were polled, they put like more trust in the clergy than they did in the schools. And not clergy, more church. Yeah, the clergy or the church or the institution of church. They still had a lot of faith in the church. They had more than they said, do you trust the information that comes from the school, from other parents, or the church more? And resoundingly, they said they trusted the information when it came to education that came from the church. So that let me know that just we as people, we still really, really hold in high regard and the opinions and the information that comes from our places of worship. And I was thinking it's just such a missed opportunity, when they don't know what's going on education, right? They don't know how to suggest to the schools, things of improvement because they're not bought in or they're not just on the ground with the correct information to maybe to offer the suggestions, right? So they're out of the loop. So I was thinking, like, we have to think of ways to kind of like engage them more, ways to like just inform them more so everybody's educated and everybody knows what's going on because these are all our babies. We send our kids here and that's where they spend most of their day. And if they're going to spend their time there and we're going to invest in this place and we're going to trust this place to raise our kids, to educate our kids, and we have to do a better job as a community establishing a unified effort from a position of from an educated position and offer those suggestions for change, for improvement, because our babies deserve it. So if you're just joining us on Facebook or YouTube, we are having a conversation about educational reform. So the question that was put forth in the article, one of the many, many questions, if you haven't got a chance, the link is in the comments. If you haven't got a chance to read it, one of the questions that was put forth was, do we think that schools do an excellent job, a good job, an okay job, a poor job, or a very poor job preparing our kids for college? So that's the first question that we want to ask. And if you are watching this, type in the comments because this is not one of those teach me moments where I'm gonna get it on and just shove my opinion down your throat. I sent the article out to a lot of 530 families. I posted on Facebook because I kind of wanted people's honest reaction. I wanted people's honest response. I want to know what they're feeling when they read it. I don't want to just only give my opinion. All right. So anything else? Looks like it's me and you carrying the conversation until we say something that pisses somebody off, Mark.
Well, let's carry it for a second. Let's carry it for a second and don't want to hog it. So if somebody wants us to come on, I'll gladly step aside. I will say this. So as we pertain to the role that the church can have in educational reform manner, I look more at first what I need to do, not what the church needs to do, but what I need to do. And then let you know my faith is one of the driving factors behind what I do. So in terms of me making sure that I give back, me making sure that not only do my children have the attention that they should have in terms of their educational endeavors, helping them catch up where they're behind, helping them fill in gaps that I didn't have the opportunity to fill up when I was young, but it's also reaching out and helping other parents do that. And I think that people have seen that I do that. So I can first start with, as a person with that background, that I do what I say and what I believe. The second thing is, and if I look at one of my neighbors, he's a pastor. He's very instrumental in the Real Men Read, right? And his form of getting reading education done because he understands that that's important in his community. So he offers that in his community. And in offering that in his community, he is being an example. So I don't want to go to necessarily every church in the state and say, or every church in the city of Chicago and say, what are you doing? But I think that we ought to reach out and find out those that are effectively doing it, who want to be engaged, because the article spoke more about that many churches that are doing it correctly want to be engaged, and let's find a way to engage them. At our church, we do things, and we at one point we tried to do something with even making sure every boy that wanted to go through a program had an opportunity to get a college education. We just didn't have the bandwidth to get that done. But we still look for opportunities and ways to promote education and make sure that opportunity exists in the community. So when I say it, I just want to point out, I think is you have to live it. You absolutely, it's not the institution, it's the heart, because the church is the people who do the right things, and it's the heart. You take your belief and you put that belief into action. You put works behind your faith. So that's why I like that part of the article.
We have from Jada Smith, says she thinks the schools do a poor job. It's a one-size-fits-all approach to learning. How do you feel about that? There was a stat in the article that just blew me away. It's on page, I marked this thing all up like it's on page 4 of the article. It's a stat in the foreword, actually. It says in 2015, for example, only 6% of ACT tested African Americans who graduated from high school met college readiness benchmarks in each of the 4 major primary subjects: English, reading, math, and science. Again, it said only 6%. And let me see if I can get that up on the screen. That just threw me for a loop, and that ruined my weekend. I was upset. I was appalled. I was just in my feelings, because these are our babies again that we are sending to this school. And if that's what we're producing, I'm not calling the schools out saying that they're doing a poor job, but I am saying that we as parents shouldn't accept that type of production, those type of results. So I'm gonna go full screen for a second. So it says, you see, I marked up my notes here. It said in 2015, only 6% of ACT tested African American students who graduated from high school met college readiness benchmarks in each of the 4 primary subjects: English, reading, math, and science. All right, so how do you guys feel about that? And whose responsibility is it to make sure that that's not happening? So we can't put it all on the school. So I don't want you guys to think this is a school bashing session, right? I want you guys, I want to come up with solutions. So these conversations are about solutions. These conversations is about synergy. So how do we address that? So we have a comment from Angela. She says, I think that the article made a great point of mentioning parental involvement needing to be improved. I also think that if parents were more involved and held schools accountable, they would have no choice but to improve the educational environment. Amen to that. All right, I agree with that. All right, so Mark, how you feel about that statement from Angela?
Let me ask you one question before we go. Can I name real schools, and can I name positive imagery, even as I speak of some other challenging things?
Bro, you can do whatever you want. So okay. The thoughts and views of Mark Billingsley are only the thoughts and views of Mark Billingsley.
All right.
It does not reflect the thoughts and opinions of the 530 scholars. All right. So now you can do whatever you want to do.
All right. So one of the things that I read as it pertains to some of the comments made, and then specifically when I look at the 2 contrasting schools of where my children go, I see some of what this article says in both, but surprisingly, I saw it flipped from where I thought it should be. By that, I mean, when I look at the school where my daughter goes and trying to get involved in that school, I felt rebuffed. I felt like they basically pushed me back and said, Mark, look, we have some things we're trying to address. Leave me alone. Do not provide your input. On the contrary, when I looked at some things happening in the school where my son went, from the principal down to the teachers, the engagement was open, it was real, and this was in the midst of calamity. I mean, we're talking March 17th, shelter at home shut down, and they were willing to talk with the parents to understand how to move forward. So when the article says parents try to step up and the schools kind of make them feel unwelcome, I absolutely felt that where my daughter goes to school at Keller, and that's the #1 school in the city. But at Poe, Principal Dockery had it on lockdown. He was engaging. He was helping them socially. He was helping the teachers get what they needed to get educationally. So even as I expressed to another parent, my son's sitting there, the teacher's talking with him for an hour. They take a break. She comes back for another hour. They're hitting math and reading hard. She was like, my child gets a half hour. And then they go away. Now, when I went to Keller and said, hey, I don't like the fact that they're only talking to my child one day a week, every 2 weeks. Why don't you call and talk to the school? We are the #1 school. Our teachers are the #1 teachers. Be patient. Leave us alone. Stop talking to us. I absolutely felt what this article said. You don't want to do what you're supposed to do. You're making the children self-learn. But I'm seeing a model work where the teachers actually have more struggles because the students at Keller are supposed to be better educated, more self-contained than the students at Poe, and that just was not the case. So the article spoke to schools need to welcome the input of the parents and work together, and that is true.
Yeah. So I definitely feel that, Mark. I think out of all the stuff that triggered me, I think it was that 6%. Because, we call ourselves the 530 scholars, right? So, it's top 5% of reading and math, standardized tests on a nationally weighted or nationally on a national percentile, and 30 on the ACT, because 30 is the number on the ACT 30 is a number for the ACT to get scholarships and access and stuff. So that's a top 5% score. So when I saw 6%, I'm like, wait a minute. So I'm good at math, and we do Vedic math. So I'm like, what's the complement of 6%? Right? So what the complement of 6 is 94. So you telling me that my kid goes to school for 12 years, and in the end, 94% of them don't meet college readiness for English, math, science, reading. What are we doing as a community? Not what are they doing as a school. What are we doing where my kid will have darn near perfect attendance, go somewhere 5 to 6 hours a day, right? Put their head down, study, do hours of homework, and when it's all said and done, after 12 years of that, they are only 6% of them are meeting college readiness. And we've been to college, so we know what those college classes are like. So especially in undergrad when you weren't in your major. So it's not like they're expecting you to be a rocket scientist, right? They're expecting you to be able to read and do math at a basic or a great or foundational level. And when I saw 6%, Mark, I gotta say, man, I was like, my whole weekend, like my mind and my understanding was just jacked up, because I probably knew it at some level, right? But it was just like, just to read it, I was like, why am I sending my kid to school?
I knew it. I knew it from the point of view of when I went to Miami University, I wasn't as prepared as I thought I was, being 19 out of 327 out of high school. Because basically, think about this. The schools are saying, we're giving your children a good education. We're meeting the standards. And your child has a 3-point this, a 4-point that. We've given them advanced placement courses and they're doing great. And then they get to college and they're in the 94% that aren't ready. So that the challenging part is our schools are saying we're doing what we're supposed to do and it's not happening. But that's why I'm happy. Now I'm going to give a shameless plug, because even as what we do with parents at 530 Scholars, We say, don't wait for somebody else to be the resource. You be the resource. You need to not teach your children to grades, and you need not to teach your children to the standards where the teacher's saying they're doing great. You know how many teachers I've had tell me, your daughter has a B. What else do you want? Your daughter has an A. What else do you want? I'm saying, I want to see the behavior that's going to translate to college. I want to see the excellence that's going to translate to survival at the next level. I don't want just a grade and be quiet. I want to know that you're teaching good habits. But as we know in 530 Scholars, the good habits come from parents working to build those habits, not putting that off on somebody else because they're not going to get it done.
Amen. And thanks for the shout out to the 530 Scholars.
All right, I am a 530 Scholar dad.
That's right. Me too. All right. So, Nick, I want to get you in the conversation. So, we have a statement by Kristen Curtis here. It says, it is a collective issue. As a parent paying for private schools, I mistakenly thought that my children's education was their responsibility. I'm assuming meaning the private school. So this is the perfect time for you to jump in this conversation. So how you feel about that?
So you can pay whatever amount of money, which my one child was in public and both are now in private. And I can speak to my experience with the situation with COVID. My daughter's school picked up the ball and kept rolling. My son's school, we had about 4 Zoom classes. And that's what ultimately brought me to the 530 Scholars, is because I was concerned about him not doing well come next year. But after he did his assessment, my expectation after paying thousands of dollars was that he would have been far more advanced than he was, and he was not. So I think what happens is parents have to, one thing that I've done is kind of, get your calendar, your planner out. And just like we plan to go to the grocery store or do chores or activities with the children, we have to do the same thing as it relates to their education. Because just because they're in a school that's ranked on the niche rankings, I hope I'm saying that correctly, in the top 10 does not mean that they're performing or outperforming a student that's in a public school. I think there are benefits to attending private schools versus public schools. I think there are benefits attending public versus private. And I think it speaks to, when we're talking about children being ready for college, they can be ready for college on an academic level, but are they ready for college as it relates to the real world and what that looks like, living away from home for the first time, having to live with a dorm mate in a very small area, work, study, and so many other things that comes with going away to school, or just even if you're going to community college, are they prepared for those life activities outside of being underneath their parents? And that exposure, I believe, also speaks to how they will perform in school.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in order for us to get them there, we have to start somewhere, because the school that is 1,500 feet from my house is underperforming. All the way up until 8th grade, everybody's in the red. I tried to join the LSC. I was given the runaround. So within your communities, I think we have to use our voice. I believe that we have to lend a helping hand to a parent who may not necessarily have all the means or know what the next step is in order for their child to be successful. And if you're not a part of a village, somebody has to pull you in order for you to participate.
I think you nail on some very, very important things. So I'm trying to figure out how to work this and talk at the same time. But I want to put up another key finding. So in this key finding, I don't know if I could zoom in, but it says, and I highlighted my document. It says results from done to us, not with us. This is a previous research study they did. Indicate that whereas African American parents report having limited flow of information from public schools and low levels of self-efficacy, and often are made to feel inadequate or unwelcome at their child's school. They believe community leaders can facilitate the flow of information and alleviate tensions by increasing the involvement with parents and schools districts. All right. So like I know Mark shared some concerns about how he experienced just the feeling of, just they didn't want your input. They were the teacher in the public school. Like how is your experience in a private school? Because obviously you're paying a lot. Do you feel like that it's more receptive, more parent involvement, or do they value your opinion more? Like, is that different for you?
So, my daughter attends a therapeutic day school, and they welcome the parent. Like, literally, you are welcome from the day you start. They help with you understanding. My daughter's dyslexic. I'll full disclosure. And she's 8. We talk about it because keeping secrets is not something that is going to give you power. So from the very beginning, they were assisting me because they knew how difficult my road had been thus far. And my voice is heard, my concerns are heard. And it's collectively a family here. With my son, with his school, there was a bit of a hiccup for me. My son was described as aggressive at the age of 6, and I felt like his teachers did not know him. Mm-hmm. So I had to take it upon myself to send emails, and then at parent-teacher conference, making sure that they knew exactly the child that they were dealing with. And I think oftentimes when teachers don't take the time to understand the child, where they come from, or understand their interests, they lump all kids into the same category and forget that they are actually children. And they put these labels on them, which I respectfully ask them to remove, because this is a permanent part of his record, that you have to be an advocate. And just like if you're going to drop your child off somewhere and you don't feel comfortable, you should feel the same way about the education that your child receives. Because if they're not speaking the same language that you are about your child succeeding and being successful by any means necessary, what is it that we have to do as a team? Then that's not the place for them. I think once the school or the individuals who are in charge of the education understand that you're going to use your voice and you're looking and absolutely believe in your child's education, then they're more likely to open the door. Because I think what has happened historically is that some people have not been as open because they felt left out, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, to your point of maybe bringing them to school and taking your child to school in a place where they don't feel safe, or you don't feel like it's safe, I think the most triggering thing for me was this page here. And as you can see, I got red everywhere. So if you guys are trying to look for a key to my note taking, whenever it's green, it's like, I'm definitely gonna do this. I can use this information. Let's get together. Let's unify. Let's make a change. But red is when I'm pissed off, right? So So you see here, it said only 3%, right? So as noted in figure 2, only 3% of Black leaders feel that schools are doing an excellent job in preparing students to attend and successfully matriculate through college, compared with 41% who believe the schools are doing a poor job or not so good job. That was a sentence that triggered me. That was a sentence that forced me to just send this to every 530 scholar, parent. That was a thing that triggered me because I was like, you know what? That's enough. So the state, being a child with, being a parent with children in the public school system, if they miss a certain amount of days of school, then they start sending these letters home, right? And then you know, if your child is not enrolled in school by a certain age, then you can get a visit from the state. And I was like, if only 3% of us believe that they're doing an excellent job, and I know it's true because I work with parents all the time and I talk to parents all the time. I'm like, I'm not even pissed off at the schools. I'm pissed off at us. I'm pissed off at us as a community because I'm like, why do we send our kids here? Why don't we go in that building with them? Right? Why don't we? Why is there not a waiting list for the PTA? Like the way it is to get into a Beyonce concert, it should be a line all the way outside the PTA because we are sending our babies in this environment that we all agree is not doing an excellent job preparing them for college, right? So when it wasn't shocking to me, that's when I got pissed off because I was like, I don't know, out of 100 people, I don't know 3 people who would say that the schools are doing an excellent job, right? So that 3% seems like it should be low on any poll, but I'm like, I can't think of 3 people that I know that would have chose excellent for that question. And if that's the case, and we are leaders, and this is our village, and we do love these kids, none of these kids should be getting perfect attendance, right? Because we shouldn't just be dropping them off in a place where we don't believe in our heart that they're getting an excellent education and they are doing an excellent job of preparing them. So I want to pose the question to you two. I want to pose a question to the people who are watching on Facebook, right? So this is what, like, these words came upon my heart, and maybe I was gonna be a preacher one day because I get some sermons, and this is my sermon for you guys: obligation versus investment. Which one are our kids to us? Are they an obligation or are they an investment? Because we have a rental property down the street, and the tenant's water was not working in the shower. It took us 3 days to fix the problem because of Corona. Because I went over there the first day to fix it myself. I couldn't fix it myself. Right. Then I called the plumber that I normally use. He was going out of town for his birthday, so he couldn't get to it. I went on Facebook search. That's all me and my wife talked about is how can we get a plumber? Because this tenant pays on time every month, and that is an investment. We don't want to mess up our investment, right? Because we're clear that unit is giving us returns. So I don't care about our work, right? If I would have had to take off work, matter of fact, I did. I left the class and had one of my instructors teaching it. You know, if my wife had to take off work, it's not like I can't go, baby, you go. It's like which one of us is going because somebody needs to go because we understood that was a investment, right? Now, if we think that education is an investment, then how do we have PTA meetings that we don't go to, right? When they're saying we're voting or we want your input on how we should move forward with this funding this year, right? And it's only 30 people in the room and it's 11,000 kids in the network. How does that freaking happen? Unless our kids are obligations. So this is a challenge. So this is a real question. Which one is it? Because I know parents don't want to say that they're obligation, but I also know what an investment looks like, right? And how we treat an investment. So we'll take off work to go and take care of a rental property if the water is not working. But if it's a PTA meeting, then we like, oh, I got to work. I can't take off work. However, if we want to go to Miami with our homies You know what I mean? Then that's what we save our personal days for. And I really believe our children deserve way better than that. I believe that if we do believe that our children are our future and that our children are our top investment, then it's time that we as parents, we as community leaders, like we need to act like it, right? And I think that, and I'm gonna stop preaching, and then you can tell I got passion. That's why I wasn't gonna say nothing at the beginning because y'all wouldn't got a chance to talk. But but I just think that we owe it to our kids, and we are being irresponsible when we don't hold those schools accountable. Sometimes people in school and principals and leadership need the parents to call them out so that they can go to their boss and blame it on us and say, you know what, I wouldn't even trip about this terrible curriculum, but these crazy parents, are holding my feet to the fire, so y'all gonna have to do something because the principal knows it's not working. I bet you if you poll some of the principals, they was probably, you polled 20 principals in that survey, and it was only 3 of them that said they were doing an excellent job because everybody knows, and that's the problem. If nobody knew, it wouldn't be a problem. But if everybody knows and everybody agrees that they're not doing an excellent job, then why aren't we doing something?
Silas, wrong level. It's the wrong level. When you go further in this article, it says, and so I'm not getting off the point. It says we have issues with resource equity, teacher quality, access to quality early childhood education, and I get the parent engagement. I don't want to go talk to a PTA because I'm not sure I can affect the budget at the PTA level. We're marching for things, but we're not marching for education on downtown Chicago. We're not marching for education in Springfield. Why don't we have all the parents who need to do all this PTA and we just get on a bus and go down to the governor and say, fund our schools in the inner city? Change the way that we put funding into those schools so that we can get these things. To me, people aren't going to the PTA because unfortunately they are working and they are trying to take their children to after school programs, and they need to build bigger funds to invest in outside programs because the schools aren't doing it. So for me, the PTA is the wrong level. That may be the wrong thought pattern, but to me, we don't support enough changes at the right level to get education actually supported in the inner city. Nick?
So a question I have is, doesn't the city council, isn't there a education committee with the aldermen?
It should be. I don't know. I've never been, so I'm preaching to myself.
And I haven't either. So when I did look about a year and a half ago, there were no minutes on record. So if they're in charge of an education committee for the city of Chicago, then why are we not using our voices for the people we're voting for in order to make the changes in our school?
Yeah, I mean,
because I can tell you, looking at the salaries that teachers are being paid, my own personal experience, when you speak about how many days a child has missed school, they used my daughter's absences from school to try to prevent me from obtaining an IEP. But she didn't want to go to school. So if she does not want to go to school because she's not comfortable there, or she's not learning, or made to feel like she does not belong, then when you look at these, talking to parents, they're not making the changes. It has to come. And I think I told you this, Mr. Green, about a principal that I encountered that greets every single person that comes into her school, no matter if it's in the morning or the evening. She is right there to greet you. That doesn't happen at all the schools that I've gone into. I think it's important for.
Oh, she lost that.
I think we lost her audio, Nick.
Okay. So
Nick, we lost your audio. Yeah,
When Nick comes back, we want to hear the rest of that.
Yeah.
I would say I'm familiar from 6-7 years ago where there were promises made at the state level for improving the education budget. It was used to help get people elected and or continue, and then it was quietly reversed. So that's why I mentioned we have to go to the right level to get this fixed. I think Nick is back.
Yeah, and I think Mark, to your point, I think you do have to go to the level that you're talking about, but I think that it's almost like as a community organizer, I realize the importance of local organizing, and I also realize the importance of what it takes to move stuff at a state and national level. And if I can't get you, not you, Mark Billingsley, right? But if I can't get a parent to commit to come to a LSC meeting or to run for LSC, right? Or just to come to a PAC meeting once a month, because like you said, they're like, well, I gotta take them to aftercare, and then I gotta, drop them off. I got other things that I have to do that I'm prioritizing over this. Then I'm not gonna get them to go to Springfield. That's part of the progression. I got to get you to come 4 blocks down the street to your local school before I get you to go 4 hours on a ride to Springfield, in order to create this change. And I think that, what we're missing is all levels, Mark. So I don't disagree that, we need to affect it at that level. I'm thinking that we don't affect it at any level. And, and I feel like I've been a leader, but I don't think we've led enough. We've been in our bubble, Mark, as a 530 scholars, so our kids are straight. And when I started the 530 scholars with Lemmy and Mr. O, I was thinking, I was doing it because I knew my kids would be all right. My kids were always testing the 99th percentile, in reading. They needed work in math, but we paid for it. So by the time 530 scholars started, my kids were already in 90th percentile in math too. So it wasn't about me, so we extended it and started working with other families and bringing their kids to a level and setting some expectations, setting some standards that were way above what schools were setting for our kids and expecting them to be geniuses and I know that they're going to get scholarships. Our kids are getting scholarships every year. Our kids are being better and better prepared for what's ahead. But now I've read this article and it just triggered me to take this thing to the next level. So the 530 scholars are going to be straight. I know that. All of them getting scholarships, right? But I'm like, that wave outside of us, those kids that are in the classroom with them that we're not reaching, they deserve a good education. And we have an obligation, because to me, our kids are our investment. When I'm 80, I want to look back and I want to look at all the leaders in Chicago that we created through the 530 scholars, through the programs, through the workshops. I want to see all the doctors we created. I want to see all the managers that we created. I want to just see all these business leaders. I just want to see the aldermen. I just want to be looking back at 80 and just looking at our work, looking at the flowers that we planted, right? Just run the city, and if we just allow them to go every day, to these buildings, we drop them off. As soon as they make contact with an adult, we're pulling off, and I have some parents, sometimes they're pissed off and they're like, this teacher couldn't call me and tell me that my child was failing, and I'm like, you didn't know? They like how your child failed for 40 days and you just found out about it when you got the report card. Like, we have to get out our car, go into those buildings, talk to people. We have to go to those LSC. We have to run for the LSC positions, right? And then my mentor in Florida, he has a strict 4G rule, right? It's get good or get gone. That's what he says. Everybody says, "How, Mr. Moses? How do you have such great teacher support?" He said, "Because I implement the 4G rule: get good or get gone. So we have to get on those LSC committees and give the principals all the support they need, right? And by support, I mean when they are performing and they're going all out for our babies, then we raise the money. We just, if they need laptops, we figure out a way to get the laptops. And also by support, what I mean is if they're not doing what they're supposed to do, right? And they don't expect our kids to be great, then we got to implement the 4G rule. Sometimes they need a little tough love, or they need, just to be what's a good word to say fired? They
Out the door.
Repurpose.
Repurpose.
However, now Silas, speak to this, because the majority of the parents that we work with, well, let me back up. Many of the parents that we work with are selective enrollment, right? We've invested tons of funds in our own way from 3 years old, right, to 5 years old to get them into a selective enrollment to set them apart on behavior, to set them apart on what the demographic of parents are and things like that. But this article is talking more about the regular neighborhood schools where getting the child to school, it isn't because the school, I mean, there's more to that in the neighborhood schools where I see a child in school and they're sitting in the hallway because their behavior is just so off the chart. And I don't want to go down that anti road. So I don't even want to distract from what needs to happen from the city to the schools. But we're the parents, if we're even listening to this, yes, let's go to the PTA. What percentage of the parents that need to be at the PTA would be there then? And not for our selective enrollment schools, but for the neighborhood schools. So what do we need to do to reach into those neighborhood schools? And we can't do it for free, right? Because we still have to pay taxes for the little bit that goes into the selective enrollment schools. So what can be done to get us into those neighborhood schools so we can make an impact, because they're not getting the funding they need. They don't have the teachers and they don't have the parents who are able to actually do what we're saying needs to be done just yet.
I would say that I wouldn't underestimate the neighborhood schools. So when you were talking, and so my kids, they go to selective enrollment schools, and I don't think that I would have been in the 3% that voted excellent on that survey. Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure that I would not be in the 3% that voted excellent on that survey. And I don't know how you would have voted, Mark, because you have kids in 2 different selective enrollment schools. And I don't know which one you would have said is doing an excellent job, right? So I don't know that because we're in selective enrollment that makes a difference. I do know that you don't have to, if you live in the community, like Nick said, like that school is right down the street. Like you could be you could be the neighborhood representative for the LSC. Because you know what's crazy, Nick? The fact that you have a school that close to your house and your kids can't go to that school, right? The thing is, we got to stop accepting some of this stuff, because it's like, why not? You know what I mean? Like, doesn't that school receive funding? Like, as a neighborhood member, a community member, like, I'm going to go in here and raise hell and make it very uncomfortable for everybody. Because even though I do not feel comfortable putting my kid in there, right? I seen this thing from Jane Elliott. I think that's her name. The lady who marched with Dr. Martin Luther King back in the day. It's a white activist, and she said she started off a seminar, and she said it was a room full of white people, and she was like, "How many of you guys want to be treated like an African American?" And nobody raised their hand. And in her way, if you see any of her videos, she's like, "Oh, you guys didn't hear me. Oh, let me repeat the question. You didn't understand the question. How many of you guys want to be treated like an African American?" And still nobody raised their hand. She's like, did you guys misunderstand the question? And everybody's like looking like, no, we didn't misunderstand the question. She said, oh, So what this means is that you understand that there's a difference, right, between the ways that they treat you and the African American, right? Also, how many of you guys have actively done anything to change it, right? And it was crickets again. She was like, so what it means is that you're aware that there's a problem and you're okay with the problem existing, and you also don't want it for yourself. So as long as you don't have it for yourself, then you're okay with that problem being there, right? So I would say to us, I have a school across the street from me, right? And I'm like, you know what? If it's not okay for my kids to go there because of the state it's in, it's not okay for any kid to go there. Not any kid from my community, right? Because my kids got to play with these kids. They may end up marrying these kids, so they may become my kids and my grandkids one day. And they're just our kids. No, it don't even have to be a justification where they're in my family. They're Black kids, and they have enough things to worry about. They have enough enemies that I need to be an ally for all of them. So even if my kid doesn't go to that school, I need to be over there on some kind of neighborhood representative to say, hey, it's not okay that this school spends $2 million every year, and these kids, only 3% of us think that you're doing an excellent job, or only 6% of them are going to test at a college level on the ACT when it's done. And we're not going to let that happen. So I know it's not just on us, but just like I said earlier, I can control what I do. And I know that I'm going to move a lot differently, after this weekend and me just sitting down and thinking about that, and I encourage other people, if you haven't read the article, read the article. And I challenge you just to figure out what we can do as a community and as leaders to move differently and just not accept some of the things that we've accepted for too long.
So one thing that I want to say about getting into the schools, they don't open the door readily for people that want to come in and help and make change, because they don't want you to expose the skeletons that are in the closet. And having sent emails to several administrators to join the community LSC spot that was available, I was shut down on several different fronts. So there was supposed to be an election prior to COVID, and now I'm just waiting for more information. But I think when people don't actually know what's available or how to reach out for those resources or what they can actually do in a school, then you're kind of standing there with your hands tied, because I can have many different resources to offer, but you have to go through different levels of security checks now. And every school doesn't have that listed on their school website. So there's steps that you have to take to even get into the school.
Mm-hmm. But once you find out, Nick, and I know you will, because that's my personal challenge to you. Once you figure out the steps, then I think we need to have another Mindset Monday, or just a mass email that just outlines the steps that we have to take. Because it's hard. I watched Harriet, and in that whole movie, it was a lot of great moments in the movie. But you know what moment stood out to me? When they passed the Fugitive Slave Act, and everybody's panicking, and they're like, well, we can't do this. And they're telling her all the reasons it's going to be way harder to free slaves, and she looked at them, and I mean, the look that actress had on her face, it just hit home. It spoke to my spirit. She looked at me and she said, maybe y'all have never experienced slavery, but I have. And I have family that's still under those conditions. And you think that I'm going to stop trying to save them because it's hard? And it was the simplest statement, but it really, really drove it home to me. And I was like, you know what? She is absolutely right. Sometimes stuff is hard, but that's no reason not to do it. They're going to make you feel unwelcome, and I think it's up to us to make them feel unwelcome if they have our kids in that building and they're not delivering an excellent education. And I think that if they want to deliver an excellent education, right, then we'll be very welcome, because we're going to find out really quickly that we want the same thing that they want, because it's not a us against them thing. I've seen teachers who love the kids, and they are frustrated just like we are frustrated. Matter of fact, it's not teachers versus parents, because some of these teachers are parents and they don't feel comfortable with their kids going to the schools that they teach at. So we're all frustrated, and we all need to be part of the solution, so it's not a, they don't make me feel welcome thing. Sometimes that's true, and it's like, okay, that might be the wrong person, but that principal or that clerk or that teacher or that hall monitor or that cafeteria lady that don't want us in there because we love our babies and we're going to uncover some mistreatment or some resource that are not allocated correctly, they need to be made to feel uncomfortable. So I'll be uncomfortable until everybody feels uncomfortable, because it's too much at stake. Like in our community, a poor education a lot of times is a death sentence. And I'm not even being overly dramatic. Like that's what it is. Like the kids that I know that didn't go to college versus the kids. I mean, some of the kids that went to college got murdered when they came back. So I have some friends that went to college, but I have a lot less kids who went to college and came back with something that got murdered in the streets of Chicago than the boys that I grew up with who've never been to school and who were not successful and did not find the love and success in education. So it's a death sentence a lot of times, and I'm not with that. Like I just cannot be like, I didn't want to feel like that when I walked in the building and they looked at me like that. Like, I don't care. Look at me. I'm gonna look at you. We looking at each other, but what we are gonna do is we're gonna get these resources for our kids, right? And we're gonna make sure that the school in my neighborhood, I don't know about the school in y'all neighborhood, because I can't run for the LSC for that unless it's another. Maybe you could be on multiple LSCs, but the school in my neighborhood across the street from me, I'm accountable for that. You know what I'm saying?
On another Mindset Monday, I'd like to bring in on page 13 when it talks about expand community networks, and it talks about the role of businesses and organizations exposing children to career options and job shadowing before they enter college, and having big companies partner with the schools. It speaks of states doing that, but we are the parents that have MBAs. We've been to big consulting firms. We work for big banks. We work for good marketing companies. We have advertising jobs. We know entrepreneurship. How do we get that influence, and how do we work to get money into the schools, and or forget the schools, get money and or access and equity to those children through that exposure? Because a child can push through adversity when they know what the end game is, regardless of their circumstance. We have a problem where children don't think there's an end game. I won't get to school. I won't get hired. I won't ever be able to do this. So I'm going to make my money the fast, easy way. How do we get business there? I don't want to derail from the school conversation today, but we need to talk about the multi-ways. And somebody wrote, it takes all levels. It takes business level too. We need to get businesses from downtown to support the South Side and the West Side. And my heart is on the South Side because that is where I reside, versus just the North Side or just to their profit line. How do we do that?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. So we got to figure it out. I don't know how to do a lot of this stuff, but I know that I want to. I have a comment, and I was being a little biased, but I'll address this comment publicly. It says, "What about immigrant parents who aren't involved, don't even know the language, but have kids who excel in school?" So I just want, because I know that sometimes in our community we're on that type of stuff. You know what I mean? And I'm going to just speak from my perspective. This is not how 530 feels, but this is how I feel. Right? I can't control or I can't affect the immigrant population. I cannot worry about what they're doing. I do know that there's always a story about a kid from Cabrini Green who became a doctor, or 3 boys who grew up together and they became a doctor. I didn't come from a wealthy background. My sister's the medical director at Howard Brown, over 5 clinics. I trained the White House, but it's not about these individuals, and sometimes that blurs the water, and that's why we have to do this research. So what I wanted to do in these conversations, I wanted to go to research sources where thousands of people were polled, and it's a community-minded thing, because we had a town hall meeting on Candy Bryant, and she was asking, like, what can we do as individuals to make this change? And I got an epiphany. I said, this is not an individual problem. So that individual immigrant that does well, that's good for them. The individual that makes it out of Cabrini Green, that's good. I'll buy their book, But what we're talking about is a social problem. And when we see numbers like 6%, then that's a community problem. That is a citywide problem. That's a lot of times a statewide problem. And we need to focus on that and impact that, and I bet, if we looked at some research, the immigrant population probably has, data that says that their schools aren't performing, because at the end, I read research that said all seniors or 8th graders that graduate from any school, only 25% of them read on grade level by the time they get out. So 75% of them not reading on grade level means this educational reform, it affects everybody. It affects Black, it affects white, it affects everybody. But if I'm gonna put on my jacket and lace up my shoes every day and go and knock on some doors and be made to feel uncomfortable, Nick, like, I'm gonna go to that Black school across the street and I'll let everybody else worry about their school. So, I wanted just to address that, because I didn't want to feel like, when people are commenting and sometimes they have different views, I don't want to feel like, I'm not including that in the conversation, because all viewpoints are welcome. And we need to discuss this, because these are things that we deal with, and these are thoughts that we have and perspectives, and, and we got to hash them out among ourselves. So I need some last thoughts, because I don't want this to be a 2-hour video. So I want both of y'all to come. Well, first, I want to thank you guys for being brave enough to come on live and just share your perspectives. And I just want to give a couple of last thoughts. So Nick, you want to go first? Just drop your mic drop moment. What do you wish parents would take away from these conversations and the information that we shared today?
I hope that the parents will know that we're here to support them, and the steps to get into CPS or the private schools, talking to the administration, we're going to make sure we know what to do in order for our children to be seen and their voices to be heard.
Mm-hmm. All right. Mark, you got some final comments?
I have a couple of final comments, so I'll try to keep this brief. The first is, from where we started, I believe, as part of this article states, the right set of clergy are important to helping this. When we talk about involvement and even having them put pressure on the city, we need to pressure the churches, just like we want to pressure the schools.
Yep.
Get to the job of improving your community with you being a pillar in that community. I think secondly, from part of my background, and I understand as you being a trainer, have used training to bring 530 scholars and improvement into the community, and you are in neighborhood schools just as much as you're in selective enrollment schools, that one of the things I need to do is press businesses to get into these schools. Mm-hmm. I think that the parents that are listening, my statement would be, parents, let's all get together. Let's challenge the clergy. Let's march for the right things. And let's march for the right things that actually improve this situation. And let's make sure that we get businesses, community involvement, and economics into our schools, the community schools.
Mm-hmm. All right, I ain't gonna touch that marching thing, because I think they are marching for the right thing. That's my personal view. That's not the view of the 530 scholars. But I do think that just in closing, I want to say that what I'm clear about from my community organizing background, from reading the article, and from just being triggered by just these different things that just did not make sense. My thoughts of obligation versus investment. Like I'm done looking at our kids as an obligation, even though I didn't think I was. You know, we've been in a lot of cases, even good parents treating schools like we treat a babysitter. We drop kids off at the babysitter when we want to go out on a date or when we want to go do other things that benefit us that we like to do or that benefits our personal development, job promotion, whatever. So I'm done like justifying and making excuses for like the things that I do that can be viewed as good, you know, and just, man, you're a good businessman, you on the grind and all this stuff while I'm allowing these things to happen in my community. And also, as a community organizer, I also want to hold the parents accountable to stop letting people come in the community and take things from this community, whether it be a paycheck, whether it be a position on the LSC, whether it be whatever. So clergy, principals, teachers, business leaders, the Arabs that sell fried chicken to us, and they know that we mastered fried chicken and how they selling fried chicken back to us. Like all these people who come in our community to take and they're not giving back, they got to go, and we got to hold them accountable for it. You know, so I want to say, just including schools, especially schools, because this is what this conversation is about. You know, if you're going to come and get a check for educating our kids, then you better do a damn fine job educating our kids. You know, and if you're not, and you're not here for the right reasons, then you can take that act somewhere else. You know, but just not on our watch. You know, we're done with it. And I just challenge parents, join the LSC, not just join, but be the president, hold the office, get a voice, and we need a waiting list at the next board meeting for CPS. It need to be so many of us in there that they can't even accommodate us all, and they need to figure out how they got to move a different way from now on. All right, guys, that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Give us some hearts in the comments. Share. Give us some anger. If you ain't like something I said, then just don't take it up with me when you see me on the street. Just do the angry face. Do the angry face in the comments. I'm too old to fight and I'm too fat to run. So I'll see you guys. Peace.